Hey everybody, welcome to the 32nd episode of Taps and Patience. My name is AJ with Design the Everything, and I am here with my co-host, Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. How you doing, Harrison?
Doing good. It's hard to believe it's already been over 30 episodes.
I know, right?
Time has flown by.
Though we have to do at least 60 more.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because when I started paying for Zencastr, it started off with a 14-day trial. And then when the 14-day trial ended, I expected it to start charging me monthly, but instead it charged me for a year.
Oh, okay.
So we have to use at least the end of the Zencastr trial, or the Zencastr year.
All right, you can hold me to that. Well, that's
One
good.
of the podcasts I listened to called Making Geeks, I've listened to them since their first episode, and they just did episode 299, and they announced that they're done on episode 300. It's like, gosh, that's a pretty good podcast run. And then they ended it gracefully, which is kind of cool.
So I started listening to a new podcast for fun. And it's a knife makers podcast. It's
Carbide
called
Content?
No. It's called Edge and Flow.
Oh, they just mentioned that on Carbide Content, which is a different knife making podcast.
Yeah, and so I really enjoyed listening to it because they have kind of a machine shop, but it's more focused around knives.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some shop talk in it, but it's focused around knife making, which I found very fascinating to kind of hear a different perspective on the machine shop layout and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of cool because they talked about on the podcast one of my local knife makers who I've known for years. And apparently one of the presenters taught a class with him. And then the other co-host or the other host was also good friends with him. So like both of those guys that did the Edge and Flow podcast are great friends with a local guy that I know very well. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I may check that out. I used to listen to a bunch of podcasts, like a ton of podcasts. And then recently, and maybe this is just because I'm self-employed now and I don't know, my schedule is more different and like the way I consume content's different, but I've stopped listening to as many podcasts. I just kind of listen to a select handful. And I went through my player recently and pared it down to, just the ones that I would actually listen to every week, the Bomb and With Intolerance. And I started listening to a knife makers podcast called Carbide Content that has John from Triaxis. He makes a knife called the Midnight that's pretty cool, and he's on the like Instant Machinist community. And then there's the guy whose name I don't remember from the Contraption Collection, the Bali Scissors guy.
Oh, he has a podcast?
Yeah, he's in that podcast.
You did mention that earlier. You did mention that like a few podcasts ago.
And then there's two other knife makers in there that are both Bali guys. That I don't really know, but Bali Song, Bali guys. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I've been enjoying that one. So they're like 30 episodes in or 32 episodes. Hey, I wonder if we passed them. Did we just pass them today? I should check.
We might have.
But I think they do it every other week, which is why we've been able to pass them. But I've been enjoying that one.
Yeah, and I think they, or at least the guy that's doing the scissors, he just released a video where he's looking at getting a new machine.
Yes, which I knew because I listened to his podcast.
Yeah. So
he went through a whole big thing of trying to get 3-phase.
Oh, how'd that go for him?
Slowly and painfully.
It sounded like it. So
okay, they're at episode 35, so we haven't passed him yet. Not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay. So I had two cool things that kind of happened last week. So one of them was Pearson Workholding reposted one of our photos.
Oh, cool.
And called us out, like Precision Ingenuity, which was kind of cool. And then the other one was I had been listening to the, and we can talk a little bit about this as well. I've been listening to The Bomb, like always. And I messaged John Grimsmo on Instagram and he replied.
Oh, cool.
Which was kind of cool.
What did you message him about?
Right there. Yep.
This is one. Yeah, there you go. There's the post. For those who are watching on video, it's a picture of Harrison's machine with his Pearson Workholding stuff on it.
Mm-hmm.
Fancy.
Yeah. It was kind of cool. You can, if you tab over to the, I think it's 3 or stay on the one you were on, and right there, that little side scroller, right down, right there.
Yeah, I know how to Instagram.
Yeah, it's gonna say, there's the parts that we made. It's that
Very
big plate.
cool.
So we did. That was our first vacuum work holded part.
Nice.
So and it came out great.
Ooh, I need to talk about vacuum work holding when you're done here.
So I messaged John Grimsmo because the two Johns were talking about sister tooling in their machining. And I had a thought, and it'd be perfect for John Grimsmo because he likes messing with hand coding and stuff. But I had a thought. In these tools that have, or in these machines that have like matrix racks of tools, instead of setting up a sister tool, would it be possible to set up a like reserve like 10 tool slots and have replacement tools? So they're not sister tools, they're replacement tools. And the difference is those replacement tools could be for any number that you have. So say you have 190 tools, you wouldn't want to set up sister tooling. And this is kind of the conversation the two Johns were having was, how many sister tools do you set up? And my thought process was, you don't set up sister tools. You just have a slot. You have 10 tools that you can have at any given time. And you could have replacement tools for any of your, say, 190 tools at any given point in those slots. And then when your tool ran out, it would take a tool from the reserve slot and put it into the normal tool slot and take the tool from the reserve, from where it would normally be and put it back into that reserve slot. So it's basically swap them.
Yeah.
Like physically swap them. And you could do that by having, if you had 10 tools reserved, you would have 11. You'd have one slot that would be open, that would be floating. So you'd stick the bad tool in the open slot, pull the good tool, and then it would assume the new number and then go back into that slot, the original slot. And so you're basically swapping them out. So you always have one open slot, and you'll have, and for John, it would work really, for John Grimsmo, it would work out really well because he's got that Excel sheet that he can tell over the next 24 hours or however long a period he wants to run for what his next tool is that's going to be expire. And what he's been doing is just replacing all the tools, regardless, if a tool's at like 30% or 50 or 40%, but it's going to expire because he's going to run for 24 hours. He's just replacing that tool and throwing it away rather than, say, running that tool till it expires and then switching it out and doing the next tool automatically.
Yeah. And plus, then all of the broken or the worn out tools would be in one spot that you could easily access. Like you wouldn't have to go searching for them.
Exactly. And so I'm amazed no manufacturer, if there's a manufacturer out there that has a system like that in place, I've never heard of it. But like as tool racks get larger and they have more tools in them, it would be amazing to see someone do something like that. Yeah. Like have the ability to like, hey, I know this tool's going to wear out next by just, running like have your machine spit out, hey, these are the tools with the top 4 or top 10 lowest tool life numbers. Make sure you have extras of those in these slots, and when they run out, we'll automatically switch to them. That would be like a really cool feature that a tool manufacturer hasn't done that I'm aware of.
Makes sense to me.
So, anyways, I thought he could do that, or because he's got the Aroa pallet system and he's got so many extra pallets, the other thought I had was that he could have extra tools in the Aroa pallet, and then just come down and stick one tool, grab the next tool, and then remove that pallet.
Well, has he said that he's at tool capacity, or does he still have open slots in there? Because I kind of thought that tool changer was massive and he had room.
He has room, but he hasn't set up sister tooling yet.
Yeah.
He has chose to not run any sister tooling and instead just puts all new tooling in whenever he's going to run it for a long period of time. And for him, I mean, all his tooling is probably small and pretty cheap, and he's just got that built into the price. But that also seems very inefficient at the same time. So that's where I was like, and he was talking to John about, or to Saunders about that, because I keep saying John, they're both John, so I need to start using their last names. He was talking to Saunders about that because Saunders was setting up a lot of sister tooling, and Saunders was the one that was actually running out of slots in his machine because he was setting up so many sister tooling that he was filling up his matrix very fast. And so I actually sent the message to both of them. Grimsmo replied to me, and Saunders just thumbs upped it. So, so I basically sent a very similar message to both of them with my idea. And but of the two, I think Grimsmo would take it on as a fun challenge and have a lot of fun with it. Whereas I feel like Saunders is the one that would actually need it more.
Yeah. Fair.
So, but that's just my hot take, I guess. If they ever listen to this podcast.
I don't think they do. Just my mom, so.
Yeah. So anyways, it was just kind of cool to kind of have like two very well known internet machinist celebrities kind of have contact with both of them, or with two of them in 1 week. So that was kind of cool.
Yep.
So anyways, so there was that. And then let's see, what else do I had going on? I have been quoting like crazy here recently. Job shop stuff. So my active bids that I've sent out right now is longer than my active job list.
Okay. That probably should be how it is.
Let me just pull this up and look at it real quick. But
because I'm trying to think about, like, I guess it depends on how big the jobs are and how fast your turnaround times are. But at the jobs that I've worked in the past, that's how it kind of should be.
So I have 6 active jobs that are not shop projects, and I have 11 jobs that I've bid, and I have 2 more that I need to bid.
Okay.
So that's like 13 jobs to 6 active ones.
Because don't they say that you're supposed to win like a third of the jobs that you bid, then you know your price is about right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember if that's the actual rule of thumb, but like you aren't supposed to win all of them.
We win way more than 30% right now.
Well, then your prices are too low.
We've been raising them slowly.
Okay, yeah. You'll find a balance there eventually.
Yeah. So, but right now we have a lot that we've sent out for bid, which is a good feeling, but the shop is a little bit slow right now, which is a bad feeling. So it's kind of...
Don't worry, all of the POs will come at the same time and just slam you.
That's exactly what's going to happen. I really only have one high-paying active job. All the rest are just like piddly stuff. So I really only have like one kind of major job that's going through the shop, and then I have like 4 major jobs that I've quoted, like 4 jobs that would keep us busy for a couple weeks.
Okay.
And
well, don't worry, I've got a piddly job for you here with the pens.
No, it's not a piddly job. That'll be a fun one. I'm looking forward to that one because that's something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to kind of do a pen, but I haven't really. It's not really something that really fits good into our product line that we currently have. So it's something I've never been able to justify. So
yeah, not a lot of pens in poker.
No, but I think it would be fun. See, that's part of the reason I like doing products with other people. I think more than job shop stuff, because 1, it's a recurring source of revenue. 2, it's usually a lot less stressful, and 3, you kind of get a chance to iterate and evolve with the product line, and that's kind of all the reasons I like doing the product stuff on my own and with other people over the job shop stuff, which is usually, hey, we need it like in 2 weeks, and it's like 13 single parts. And you never know what you're getting, and you're having to rush material here and tooling here, and just the margins are usually higher, but it's also a lot more stress.
Yep.
So, but anyways, what's been going on in your world? Do you want to talk about what's going on with you right now?
I have been actually making chips. I've even had to, and I'm not sure if you can believe this, but I've had to empty my chip tray twice.
Whoa.
In the entire run of the Not for Climbing Carabiners, I only emptied it once.
Wow.
But because mostly I just make things that don't make a lot of chips. But I have been working on the Better Desks product line. So I have these pen rests. This was one of the prototypes.
That looks awesome.
And I just finished up today the first couple of these sticky note trays.
How'd you do it?
How'd I make them? Exactly like I made the pen rests. Which is I Op 1, just block of aluminum in a vise. Op 2, I have a fixture that I screw on to the bottom of it, and then I stick that back in the vise.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's not a perfect system, especially for the pen rest. It worked pretty well, or it worked. It's not a perfect system for the sticky note trays. It worked pretty much flawlessly with the pen rests.
Mm-hmm.
The sticky note trays, I'm not entirely sure what's causing my issues, but it's kind of hard to get the fixture to line up with the boss that's on the bottom of these.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because of clamping forces warping the sticky note trays when I'm machining them in op 1, or maybe when, I don't know. I think they're not quite flat, and I haven't really figured out a good solution for that yet.
Okay.
The other problem is I'm using button head 440 screws to secure them, and I keep stripping them out. Like, I've stripped out a lot of those screws.
Oh, out of your part? Your part's tapped, right?
I strip out the hex in the screw itself.
Oh, are you using Allen or are you using Phillips?
Allen. So I just need to switch to like probably a Torx socket head.
I was going to say Torx is probably going to be your best.
But yeah, it's just a little tiny Allen wrench, and I just constantly strip those things out.
I was thinking you were stripping them out in your part.
No, the part's fine.
Okay. What material are your screws made out of? Are you getting them out of stainless or out of steel?
Don't remember what they are. I don't remember if they're nickel plated or if they're stainless.
Stainless fasteners typically have a lot stronger retention because the quality of stainless is usually better than the quality of steel used in screws.
I don't know why, but I have found that the stainless ones tend to strip easier, and that generally the black oxide ones have worked the best for me.
That's not the experience I've had, but maybe I'm just used. I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know. I think just switching to a real socket head instead of the button heads, and then also going Torx would do it. Even just going to the socket head might be enough.
Okay.
But I made about 20 of the pen rests. 16 of those went to Patreons, and the other 4 or 5, I think I must have made 21 of them, because there's 5 right now in the on my store, on my website.
Mm-hmm.
The sticky note holders, I think I'm at 3 right now, or 4. I need to run a couple more of those tonight, and I'm just going to make 5 of those and put those up on the store. And then we're basically just doing a soft launch with these now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm showing them on Instagram, I'm putting them in the store, but I'm not really doing a push on them. And then once we have like the full system sorted out a bit more and, like cohesive, and we can take pictures of everything together, then we'll do the hard push on the Better Desk stuff.
Okay. And remind me, you are using a ball end mill to do the edges of those?
Yes. Because nothing is a simple 90-degree fillet.
Yeah.
Every side has curvature.
This wouldn't work well for your pens, I don't think, but for your sticky note one, I wonder if you could stick it in on your 4th axis and just round that edge.
Probably. I'm sure there's a bunch of different ways of doing it.
Or get a custom form tool.
Yeah, a custom form tool would be the way to do it in production if I'm making a lot of these things.
Yeah.
The nice thing about them right now is all of the Better Desk stuff is currently using the same set of tools, and except for the 440 drill and tap, they are all core tools. So that makes them really quick and easy and they use the same vise setup. With the same
I think those are going to do really well.
I hope so. That would be a nice win.
Because it's usually the simple, elegant products that do the best.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I screwed up finishing a batch of the pen rests 4 different times.
Oh, really?
Yes. The nice thing about finishing these is yes, they progressively shrink as you remove more and more material from the outside, but it's not really that much. And I'm not trying to hit tolerances. Yeah. But when I first did it, I over tumbled them, and then I retumbled them, and then I accidentally left them in my ultrasonic for too long, and they turned black and brown.
Mm-hmm.
And then I retumbled them again, and some of them still had some discoloration, and so I retumbled some of them again, and I ended up using some Scotch-Brite to do a Scotch-Brite finish on those. But I was like, oh gosh, how can I screw these up anymore?
Oh my.
But oh well.
Fair enough.
Tumble out. It'll buff out.
It'll buff out. That's the nice thing about having products that are low tolerance. As long as they look cosmetically good.
Yep.
So go ahead, and then I have another thought.
Nope, I've already lost it. Go on.
Oh. So remember a couple weeks ago, whenever I talked about making 1911 grips on the lathe?
I do remember that.
So yesterday I programmed that out.
Okay.
And
doing them on the lathe, you mean?
Yeah. And I think it's going to be sweet. I really want to do some videos and show this whole setup because it's going to be pretty wild, I think. In fact, if I have it pulled up, I can take a screenshot and I'll send it to you so you can show it to everyone on the podcast.
So why didn't you do these ones with that method?
Huh?
So why didn't you do your first batch using the lathe method?
Because for one, we downloaded a model and just ran them.
Fair enough.
Because we didn't have a good method I didn't want to reverse engineer them. I just wanted to start with something that worked. And the ones that we downloaded would not work for the lathe turning method. I had to make them from scratch. But I wanted to get a little bit of experience making a few that way and see if it was worth all the effort of going through and doing it the way that we're about to try.
Should you describe the lathe method for everybody who doesn't remember that conversation from like 6 weeks ago?
Well, I'm about to send you a photo that you can see exactly what it would look like. It's only going to have one handle on it because that's all I've done just to kind of work out the concept of it. All right. Let's see your screenshot. And this will just kind of be a preview for everyone who listens to the podcast and finds this stuff interesting like I do.
Really, for everybody who watches the podcast?
True.
Because the people
I was going to say, you can't really listen to see. That's a valid...
I try to describe things, but...
Yeah. So we'll show that, and then we'll show that, because that kind of shows the toolpath that it's going to be making.
Resume.
All right, so I just sent you those images. We'll kind of go over them top to bottom. Okay. So the first image shows one of the 1911 grips, and underneath the 1911 grip is a fixture that I'm going to have to make that's going to bolt to a square bar. Mm-hmm. And that square bar is going to have a turned end that's going to go into the lathe, and then the other end is going to be drilled with a hole that the live center can run into. So it's going to be supported on both ends, and it's going to be turning the area in the middle. And because the top of a 1911 grip is thinner than the bottom in terms of width, but it's exactly the same height, it had to be a cone shape. So if you go to the second image, what you're seeing is the cone shape that the lathe is going to be turning, and that kind of shows you the outline of the 1911 grip on top that's going to be cleaned up. It's going to be an interrupted cut. It's not going to be an actual cylinder, but that's the surface that the lathe is going to be following, and that surface lines up with the 1911 grip. And then the last image is what the wedge is actually going to look like. And I'm going to have holes on the top that the 1911 grip is going to go into. And then on the bottom, which I didn't show, I have 2 pins that are going to be used for alignment. And then that middle hole there is going to be where I'm going to bolt through the top of this to rigidly mount it to the square bar.
Yep. So knife maker's method, in other words, what size screws are you using to secure the...
It's not the knife maker's method.
Oh, because you're bolting from the top.
I'm bolting from the top.
Okay. What size screws are those?
Those are they're just the standard ones that come on 1911 grips. I don't remember. They're like a number 6 by 60 or something, or 8 by 60. It's a weird size.
Yeah.
Or 8 by 56. It's a weird thread. Like all the gun stuff is weird thread size. You have to thread mill basically the gun stuff.
Okay.
or buy really expensive weird tabs.
So they're not tiny. They're not tiny screws though.
They're small, but they're not small enough that I don't think it's going to fall off.
Well, they're not odd 80s.
No.
What material is your fixture going to be made out of?
Stainless.
Okay. Well, that's going to be a chunk of stainless there.
Well, I have to make, that's the exact same stainless square bar that I make a lot of drive shafts for companies around here. Okay. So I already have all the tooling and everything already set up. I basically run that all the time. Or at least I'm set up to where I can. And so it's real easy for me to, and I have chunks of scrap laying around that is that size.
Okay.
So the most complicated part is going to be that ramp wedge that's going to hold it on an angle.
Mm-hmm.
And I've toyed around with the idea of trying to maybe resin print that, because the university I teach at just got a resin printer. And that's going to be kind of a pain in the butt part to machine because it's a tapered wedge. And so you can kind of see where I kind of put those flats on the side. And I did that so that I can lay it flat and machine the top straight on, but then still have it be wedge shaped.
You said it's tapered. You just mean it's a wedge, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not actually. I mean,
it's just a wedge.
You could get some like angled parallels, or all you do is you just surface it in. Like you're only making 4 of them.
The surfacing in is not the problem. The problem is that the holes that are holding the grips have to, I have to thread mill those straight on. That's my problem.
Could you surface in the backside? So do in op 1, do your flat face there in those holes, and then flip it over and surface in the back.
They have tight tolerance pinholes to locate them accurately on the stainless steel part.
Oh, okay, yeah. I still want to do them in resin. That this is kind of a scary fixture already. I wouldn't want plastic parts in there.
Yeah. Well, I've just toyed around with that idea, but at least to validate that it's all going to work before I put all the work into machining it. I'd put a set of aluminum grips on there and just have all my tooling out of the way and just kind of spool it up and just kind of get a feel for how it sounds and acts. Maybe not actually run them.
Yeah, I think you just need some angled parallels. You got to be able to pick them up from Shars or whatever for.
Yeah, but I need a very specific angle. I don't remember what that angle is, but it's modeled in there. It's not modeled to a specific angle. I let it find its own angle based on the taper of the 1911 grips.
Could you do it with soft jaws? Custom soft jaws?
Probably, but I was trying to build it into the part instead of building custom fixturing because I'm only doing 4. Because if I can build it into the part, so what I'm using a method that I actually got from watching the Knife Designer on YouTube. He made a fixture where he basically took a part and set it on end, and he machined in the angle, flipping it end for end into the part. That way, when he laid it flat, it would sit at that angle, so he could. So my plan was to start with the solid block, do everything on the bottom side that's going to be going against the square bar, flip it on its end, machine in that angle, flip it over, machine in the other angle, and then I can lay it down on the jaws flat and get to the top face and flatten that out to where it'll match the angle that's in either side, and then do all my features to hold them in.
That'll be a fun part.
Yeah. It'll be a very challenging part, but I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Because even if you had a 4th axis, it wouldn't even be that helpful.
No.
Well, I guess unless you had a long bar this way and there was enough clearance. But I don't think the micro arc would have enough clearance to be able to rotate that the long way.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
You just need to get a 5-axis.
Yeah, that's a good 5-axis part, but it's a fun one.
Yep.
So, and that's why I toyed around with the idea of resin printing it. If I could get a strong enough, they have those engineering grade resins that I thought about sending it into like a Xometry or a Shapeways or something like that, and getting it out of a strong resin, and just seeing how that held up. Because I've used a lot of 3D printing fixturing and they've all held up way better than I thought they would.
Fair.
And I feel like the engineering tough resins would be plenty strong.
I don't know. I'm scared of lathes, much less interrupted cuts on a lathe, much less interrupted cuts on a lathe supported by 3D printed parts. I just find that terrifying.
There's definitely an element of crazy in what I am saying, for sure.
But if it works, it'll be fast.
Yeah. So
Now,
it takes my cycle time down from to I'm about an hour of machining, include with the surfacing, per two handles, per two grips, and it'll take about half the time out of it, almost.
Okay. And potentially better finishes.
Way better finishes.
Yeah.
Way better finishes. Because I won't have the ball end mills. Because the ball end mill's trying to still interpolate that angle. This will be a true radius. So, and I can take a really fine step over and be way faster than what I can do on the mill.
I'm excited to see this thing work.
Yeah, it's a cool project. Like, it's a lot of fun. So, anyways,
and so let's see, there would be 2 screws. So you're blanking these out on a mill first, right?
Correct. So there's 2 ops on the mill, and then the third op is on the lathe.
And that's the final op?
And that's the final op.
Okay. You think there would be any issue with like deburring? How would you deburr?
I have no idea if there's going to be a problem with deburring or not, but we're already having to hand finish these slightly, even with the ball end mill, just to remove to blend out all the tool marks, because there can't be any tool marks on these if we're going to be selling them as aluminum blanks. Because all the aluminum blanks that we've bought off of like Amazon to kind of see what they look like, they all have been finished out, and you can't see any tooling marks on any of them.
Well, you have a tumbler now.
Yeah, and ideally, if I can get a good enough finish, I can tumble these or sandblast them and get basically finished parts.
Yeah.
And so
on both my pen rest and the sticky note rest, I was doing a 10 thou step down with a 1/4 inch ball nose, and that tumbled out just fine.
Yeah.
So
10 thou step down?
Yep.
Oh, so 1 thou?
No, 10
thou. No. 10. I was thinking tenths, not thou. 10
no,
thou.
Yeah, not 10 tenths. No, 10 thou.
10 thou.
I originally was doing it at, I think, a 5 thou step down, but that took a really long time. And so then I changed to 10 thou, and it went twice as fast.
Yeah.
That doesn't look quite as good coming off the machine, but they look the same when tumbled.
Yeah. That's good. So, anyways, that's a fun kind of preview for any of those listening to the podcast and watching the live video. Or not the live video, but the video that goes with the podcast. So,
if you get this dialed in, I want to do like a collaboration grip where we do like a generatively designed.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing. Because I've got a really good process. So when you were looking at that gold grip on my Instagram page, there's a texture on that, and I figured out a really cool way to get that texture in where it's the same depth, even though it's following a curved surface.
Yeah, I think we talked about that with like projecting to a plane or a
so you basically
shell
project
or whatever it was.
You project the plane one radius distance away based on your tool size, and then you do a trace. You put your tool path on that surface, and then you do a trace off that, and then you decrease it by your radius plus 5 or 10 thou, however much you want to go into the part. And then no matter where it ends up on that part, it's going to be the same depth.
Yeah, that's slick. Yeah, I have some new generative patterns that so far only exist in my brain that I want to try out. One of which actually replicates a pattern that I kind of accidentally did with my end mills wearing out when I was making the coins. And basically, they resulted in a fade from one side of the coin to the other side as the end mill broke.
Oh.
But I figured out how to kind of mimic that without the end mill breaking.
That's cool.
And those were the Wabi Sabi coins, and they looked really good.
They did.
But basically, I figured out that so the way the algorithm worked was it divided the surface up into a grid, then it would either draw a north-south a north-south line, or a east-west line inside that grid. And like the algorithm had no awareness of what was happening in any of the other squares. All it did was, draw a line, and they just happened to connect like that, and it looks really cool. But what I realized I could do is I could add a random chance of it skipping a line. And the further it goes throughout generating the path, I can just increase the chance that it skips a line.
Oh,
and that would give me a fade.
That's cool.
So I want to play with that. The other thing that, again, so far only exists in my head is I want to figure out how to do basically the same pattern, but onto a pen. So I want to do generatively designed pen patterns using my fourth axis.
So you can do it. You can do a wrap. Have you ever wrapped a image?
I have not tried doing one 360 degrees.
So basically what you need to do to make this work, I'm going to give you the blueprint so you can take this and run.
I'll tell you how I was going to do it after this.
Okay. You need to know the diameter of your part, which is pretty easy.
Which we know, that's easy, yeah.
And so you can make, based off of that, you can know the rectangle size that you need to make that work. And then you put your grid down on that rectangle. And then you just need to have it to where if it's going to draw a line, for example, and you're trying to make a continuous pattern that's going to, you can't tell where the seam is.
Yep.
Then basically what you do is if you have a grid and say it's 10 units wide, you have it generate values between 0 and 20. And when it's over 20, when it's going from like a 11 or like from a 9 to say 13, that means it's going out and then it's coming back in on the other side. And so when you wrap that image, it's going to line up.
Yeah.
And so basically you're making a false side that is going to come back in onto itself. And so that way lines can jump out, and when you wrap it, everything will line up.
The question is, can Fusion handle that wrap without freaking out? That's my question.
So if you have it, if you have a known size that you're going to, then it should be able to. It should be able to handle that.
I'll try that.
But basically, you're gonna have to limit your generation to be very hyper specific to the rectangle box that's going to wrap perfectly around your part.
Oh, that's easy. That's just pi d, and like I can define the exact size in the code.
Yeah. So as long as you do that, Fusion should be able to do that.
I'll try that. I'll see if it can handle that. So here was my method. My method was to take the section of cylinder that I want to do the engraving on, and basically split it up into like a stack of pies is the best way I can describe it. So imagine a full pie that has been cut into 8 pieces or whatever. If you are looking at that from the outside, there's basically a set of vertical lines running up and down. And then there's also the horizontal lines that are the section of crust there that you can see from the end. So instead of taking one pie, you just take a set of pies and you stack them up. And then the algorithm will decide, okay, do I want to go across the crust or do I want to go up the slice? And it'll just repeat that for all the different sections of pie. So it's basically exactly the same thing, but instead of a grid, it's polar coordinates with a set of pies. And it's either making an arc segment around the outside, or it is doing a line straight up the...
So the method you're thinking of, you do a 3D sketch instead of a 2D sketch.
Yes, it would be a 3D sketch.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would work too.
Which, fun fact, when you're using the Fusion API, all sketches are 3D sketches. So it's not really, other than the mental gymnastics of trying to figure out how to code it, it's not actually any more difficult.
Okay. So your method, I would say, is more elegant and probably robust, where mine would basically be taking your existing program and just adjusting a few things and then just wrapping it, letting Fusion deal with the wrap part.
Yeah, I'll have to play with both, I think. The doing it in 3D appeals to me in that I may be able to do other variations of the algorithm more easily, but maybe that's not even true.
If you're dealing with polar coordinates, and if you try to do an angled polar coordinate where you're where you're going from like this point to this point at a different elevation, but following an arc.
Yeah.
I feel like that's gonna like not line up to the surface of your parts.
Fair. Yeah, I don't know. I have a couple other things I want to try. I want to try, and I'd have to play with this to see how it actually looks. But basically, imagine you take probably hexagons or octagons, and you stack them at varying angles.
Mm-hmm.
That could give you some sort of cool result. And then there would be a whole bunch of surfacing with a ball mill. Actually, you probably, if they were flat, you could just knock them out with a regular end mill. I don't know, but basically, you could build a pen body by stacking various shapes. You could even do, like randomize like how many sides the shape has as you go.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be like hexagon, octagon, pentagon, dodecagon, whatever, nonagon, and just stack them up. And it might be kind of sharp in the hand, but I don't know. It could be cool if done right.
It could.
There is another type of pattern, which would be fun, where I would do this with circles going down the body of the pen, but let's imagine it as lines on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. Imagine you take a line, you just draw a straight line across the top, and then below that, you draw a copy of that line, but you add in some randomized distortion. Mm-hmm. And then below that, you add in another line, another copy of that previously distorted line, but you add in more distortion. And you just distort. Kind of like playing telephone. And eventually you end up with, a pattern of lines that are slowly getting, more and more wild. I've seen people do something similar to that looks really cool. But I could do that circularly on the pen.
I think you need to take your pen. If you do a pen that has that generated design on it, you need to do a pen stand that has a generated design in the base of it.
You mean like a pen rest?
Yeah, your pen rest. Like, you need to do something in the middle of that has a random generated pattern on the inside of that.
So I'm not sure if it shows up on the webcam, but there is a like faux knurling kind of pattern here.
Mm-hmm. But if you did that
that was the plan.
If you do that as a random pattern, that would be so cool.
Yes, and it would match the pen. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we started with a pen rest, because we knew the pen was next.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Yep.
That would be really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, we need the pen to be a lot more exciting than this batch of carabiners were.
Mm-hmm. Which is your Kickstarter over?
No, it's still got about 5 days left or so. I can show it here. It is definitely... The Kickstarter has definitely picked up from where we were, which is really nice.
Have you had any more upticks? Like, have you done stuff and seen upticks again?
So this right here, this day was when we implemented a bunch of changes. And you can see, like, after this day, let's see, we had one day that was 187, but the average is, I don't know, $400 or something. Whereas before we were averaging like $200 before we implemented those changes. So that's been a really nice uptick and has made me feel a little bit more comfortable about the future.
That's awesome.
We even had, let's see, so our first day was obviously the biggest. It'll always be that way. But generally our second day is the second biggest. But we have had, especially after these changes, a bunch of days that were bigger than our second day.
That's comforting.
So
that's awesome.
It really makes me wonder about how much money we missed out on by not making those changes earlier. But oh well, what's done is done.
That's cool. So where are you at right now?
So, okay, let's go to our dashboard here. And I can't scroll down or I'll show customer information, but we are at just over $11,000.
That's awesome. So
5 days left.
Even though it's not as high as you would like it to be, is that still a comfortable amount? Like, is that still, like, are you going to walk away from this and be like, it was definitely worth our time?
It was definitely worth our time. It's not a super comfortable amount. There's not a lot of extra room left to get to our next Kickstarter.
Okay.
Basically, the way our cash flow is going to work out is we are going to be very, very tight basically during the next Kickstarter, because the Kickstarter, like, after you launch the Kickstarter goes on for 4 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that you get paid. So like those last couple weeks there are going to be really, really tight. Like Scott may have to take a vacation kind of tight.
That's
And
scary.
yeah, so,
Yeesh.
but I mean, yeah, I expected this campaign to be much bigger.
Yeah. Well, as scary and as frustrating as that is, you guys, I'm sure, have learned a lot from this experience.
Yes, we did.
So I think in the long run of your business, it'll be a net positive.
Yep.
And I had a nice long conversation with someone the other day about the struggles of business and how many how long it takes to really get your good footing underneath you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And now, granted, I realize you've been doing this a lot longer than I have at this point, but there's still a lot. You haven't been doing this as your full-time gig for a very long time, and so in that sense, that's a whole new set of footings that you're going through, kind of like what we are over here.
Yep.
So,
very much different than doing it as a side hustle. Yeah.
yeah. Your priorities change drastically.
Yep.
Even though you're doing the same thing and you're trying to get similar outcomes, it's just there's a lot more weight behind it.
Yep. I will say, as some good news, is we have started experimenting with paid online advertising for just like our regular store.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also very much a learning thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott has a history of advertising. However, he has worked for newspapers with like print advertising. He has not really done the social media advertising up until now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to get our regular online store sales up. And, it's always been in the game plan to do that with some, traditional social media ads. And we started that on Monday of this week, I think. Well, Monday of last week, with the goal of hitting 1.75 return on investment. So if we spend $100, we wanted to get $175 of income, which is not profitable for us. That's just kind of break even when you consider the cost of making the products. But that was just our first goal. And we hit that in the first week. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we had, I guess, depending on how you measure it, we tried like 4 different ad campaigns, just experimenting with. One of them definitely hit that return on investment goal, like very clearly, with very like measured sales. Then we had, I think it was 4 other sales that we couldn't directly attribute to any of the other campaigns. Like we couldn't tell where they were coming from, but they were people who had never heard of us before and we had never heard of them. So they definitely came from the advertising somehow. They just dodged the analytics. And so depending on how you measure it, we hit that goal.
There's something that I just remembered that I've been meaning to tell you, but I just remembered now on the podcast to tell you. So take this with a grain of salt. But I had an individual who stopped by my shop the other day who has a daughter who's in the cruise line industry.
Okay.
And she's in charge of filling the gift shops for the cruise lines. And he was looking around at our products, and I took that opportunity to show off your carabiner. And they really liked it. And I have no idea. This guy just came in one day, but he was interested in your carabiner and wanted to talk to his daughter and see if that was something that they could get on the cruise line. So take that with a grain of salt, but I thought that was kind of cool.
That would be cool. I did get approached for one other potential wholesale order, and I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but someone was asking about some engraved carabiners.
Did you get the carabiners we did, by the way?
I did.
Were you happy with those?
I was mostly happy with them. I had to retumble them for a bit because there was a little bit of what I think was heat anodization, like adjacent to the engraving. I think because my carabiners are so thin in some places, they got hot under the laser and there was some surface discoloration.
Yeah.
But I did some tests on some of the setup pieces I gave you, and I found out that I could put them back in the tumbler for, I think I did like an hour. And that got rid of most of that discoloration and did not affect the engraving.
Ooh, that's awesome.
So
Yeah,
that worked out well.
I didn't see them all because my cousin was the one that mostly dealt with it. But there was, I think, one that I looked at that I saw a little bit around the edge on some of the lettering. But
Yeah.
I didn't obviously see all of them because he was doing that in the background while I was doing other stuff. So
I think in the future with the not so tactile carabiner, they'll be much easier to engrave because they will have better wall finishes, which was the other
yeah,
big problem is the engraving just didn't look good on those laser cut walls.
yeah,
But I think with how I'm planning on redoing the fixturing and the setup, I can machine the walls, which will make them look a lot better, both for the not for climbing and for the not so tactical carabiners. And that'll
are you
fix
gonna
a
be
lot
able
of
to
those issues.
oversize your carabiners and then finish the outside?
Yes.
Sweet.
Um,
That'll look way
this
better.
also still only exists in my head, and I haven't actually done the work yet. But theoretically, I should be able to machine the full perimeter inside and outside.
That'll look so much better.
Yes, I didn't mind the laser cut finish, but a little bit more fit and finish on them would be nice.
Yeah, I think that'd look awesome. That's exciting.
Oh, I don't remember if I mentioned this on the podcast yet, but we were talking about getting the custom 100 thou end mill made 0.1 inches. Someone pointed out to me that a 2.5 millimeter end mill is like 98 thou, which is basically perfect. So I don't need to get a custom tool. I can just get a 2.5 millimeter tool.
Well, there's that, and there's the ones that I found on Harvey for you.
And there's the ones that you found on Harvey. But
Yeah,
2.5 millimeter tools are cheaper than Harvey tools.
Harvey one, well,
Yeah.
100 thou tools.
And then I can stick with my Kyoceras.
There you go. See, I figured you could probably get that size because as you get into the smaller tooling sizes, they start stepping up the increments a lot closer. Yeah. The increments are a lot closer, so the odds of you finding something are a lot greater.
So 2.5 millimeters will be perfect. Though also, I could theoretically make the blanks a little bit bigger to fit my 3 millimeter tool in there better and give some more wall size. But I think I want to keep them the same size.
That's good. Let's see here. We're testing out our pause feature.
Yes.
Your patterns that you're doing for your scales.
Yep.
You had some that were randomly generated as well, right? Or
yes. Using the same algorithmic code that I've been using.
So when you're using that same code, is it machining the whole surface? Like, is it machining out in the blank space?
In this case, since I am not making each of the scales unique, they're all going to have the same pattern on there. I can trim those sketches to the surface of the carabiner, and it does not machine a whole bunch of blank space.
Oh, so you're using the project to surface?
Nope, I just went in there and deleted off the grid that I didn't need. I could have used the project to surface trick, yes.
Yeah, you should try that because I think that'll be a much more efficient flow for you in the long run.
Yes. I didn't do it this time because that grid had like, I don't know, 15,000 points or something in it, ridiculous. And I wanted to free up Fusion's memory.
Mm-hmm.
Fusion did not like generating that. It took like an hour.
Well, when you delete, when you project, I think it just hides all the points that it's not using to where it doesn't affect memory, I think.
Don't you have to do it in two separate sketches? So you would still have the sketch with like 1 billion points in it.
No, you have the one sketch with all the points in it, and then you project to surface, and it makes a new sketch of just the points that are in it, and it hides the other sketch. It like absorbs it or something.
Oh, okay. I assumed that both sketches hung around. I don't know. That might work still. I'd have to play with it.
I think. I don't know. You might have to play around with it. But I know that before I projected to surface and after I projected to surface, there was a big difference in how fast my computer ran.
Okay.
So it seemed to run much faster after projection. But
you are not using your mod vices mainly, right?
I use them on really big parts or really long parts.
Okay.
But I use my vice any chance I can get. My mod vice is the secondary vices, and my 5-inch vice is my main vice.
Okay.
And the reason is because I just have much finer control over how much pressure I put on it, and I can do that by feel a whole lot easier than I can with the Saunders vices. The Saunders vices are awesome when you need them. Like I did that, I did a almost 28-inch long part the other day,
Yeah.
and I used 3 vices, and I held it way off the table, and then I did one end, and then I flipped it and did the other end. I think we did that as like a story on Instagram. I don't think we actually posted on it, and that worked flawlessly.
Okay. One of the things that annoys me with the mod vices is you always have to, like, whenever you're rearranging them or you are even just tightening and loosening parts, there's like a million screws that you have to undo and redo. Yeah. And so I bought I've tried a couple different things over time, but I bought a pneumatic wrench.
Oh, really?
And put the right tool in it. And that has actually been fantastic.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lean improvement.
It was a lean improvement. I tried using a drill with the torque limiting thingy on it. I tried using an impact driver, and I just didn't really enjoy either option. I broke a tool that was in my ATC with the drill once because the drill was so tall up off the ground. But then I got this pneumatic wrench at Harbor Freight for $20 and 3D printed a nice little holder so I can just hang it on the side of my mill. And I bought, a set of hex end bits for it, whatever you call those.
It's not
a socket, but it's
like the Allen keys, the socketed keys, socket Allen keys.
Yeah, sure, socket Allen keys. I bought a set of those, and now it's just zip, 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 zip.
That's awesome.
And
you can set the torques on those with your air pressure. Do you have like a regulator for it, or?
So it is on the same regulator that runs everything on the mill. So it's about, I think, 100 psi that it's running at. It doesn't really matter exactly how much torque it's producing as long as it's consistent.
Well, if you're running really thin parts, you need to. So yes,
I could dial it down with thin parts if I needed to.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, I couldn't, because I'd have to dial down the tool pressure air.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. If you have a separate knob, you can adjust.
That would be nice.
So what we do is, and I think I've mentioned this before, we just have a separate regulator with an input and output on it, just on the regulator.
Like a quick connect.
Like quick connect on both ends. And we can add it in any time to any outlet at any time that we need it. So
I should invest in one of those.
If we have a tool that we need to run at a lower pressure, we can just grab that, stick it in line, and turn the pressure up or down depending on what we need at the time. And then we're done. It just goes back in the toolbox. And so it's just, and it's just a small one. It's just a cheap one. Because anytime you're limiting airflow or limiting pressure, you usually don't need that much flow. So I think we just got a cheap Harbor Freight one for like $40, $30. And it works
Someone
great.
has got to make a little tiny regulator that like fits onto the end of a quick connect or something that you can just stick right in the end of your air tool. That's got to exist.
I don't know.
Like without a filter or anything, just...
You know the regulator on the back of the Tormach?
Yeah.
So it's basically that size.
I want one that's like, it could fit on the end of the tool and not be intrusive.
Yeah.
That would be really nice.
For certain applications, that'd be amazing.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was looking at like fancier versions of this tool. Like a lot of the times I'll start with the Harbor Freight version of a tool and then move up to a nicer one when I know it's like what I want. And the Ingersoll Rand version that was like $400 had a ring right on it. And I wasn't sure if that was for changing torque or what. It wasn't very descriptive in the Amazon listing, but it's like, that would be nice.
That would be very nice.
I couldn't find anything that was like an air torque wrench. Like that didn't seem to exist.
Yeah, because like for air impact wrenches, they have that knob on the back that you can adjust how hard it's hitting on the fly, which is basically like regulating your air. But not all tools come with that.
Can you like dial in a torque on that? Like, does it give you a torque or is it just like low, high, medium?
It's just low, high, medium. So like if you're trying to be consistent, you really need something that has a gauge, and then you can equate that air value to a torque rating. But that's something you kind of got to figure out with time.
One thing I did see was ratchet extensions that had a slip clutch in them. So that like, cool. You could just stick it between your hex and your air ratchet, and it would not do more than 30 foot-pounds or whatever. Mm-hmm. Which that would probably be the cheap and easy way to do it. Well, no, the cheap and easy way would just be to buy a cheap regulator. But it would be the easiest way, I guess. But they were kind of long, and I didn't want something that was too long. I like how
Yeah.
low profile the 90-degree air wrench is.
Yeah.
Also, you sound
So
like a NASCAR pit crew whenever you're changing
that's a
out
guy
parts.
in the background. I apologize. I have someone in the neighborhood who has gotten a car souped up, and they have been driving by
They've
every
been
night
enjoying
around this time, and they're really loud. Which I'm the kind of guy that would do that, so I can't say too much.
it.
But it is kind of annoying at times. So
We have a neighbor who does small engine repair, I think as a full-time gig, maybe as a side gig. But he runs small engines in his driveway constantly.
oh yeah,
Like all actually it must I bet it's a side gig because he actually mostly does it at night. So
oh it
every
could
night
be.
we get serenaded with lawnmowers and generators and
Yeah. Off topic, I have a Fox Body Mustang that I really want to restore.
ooh. You have it? Like
Yeah,
it is
it
in your
was my college
possession?
car.
Okay.
I drove it
Nice.
all throughout college. 92 Fox Body 50 with the manual 5 speed. I've done a little bit of work to it. The second day I had it, the transmission blew up.
Oh no.
So, well, third gear specifically. And when I bought it, it had manual on the title.
hmm
But when I looked up the serial number, it was originally an automatic. So someone did a conversion on it.
Yeah.
And the gearbox, the manual gearbox that they put into it had been rebuilt recently, but it had a whole bunch of silicone along the outside. And when I got in there and I sent it to a professional to have that rebuilt, they said that third gear was shimmed to where only about 12% of the gear was actually catching in third gear. So
Hmm.
I didn't even hit it that hard. I just
Yeah.
was driving it, and then I just gave it a little bit of gas, and I was in third gear, and it was just like, thankfully I could shift into other gears, and I was able to get home, but it was really annoying. And then later on, I had 3 bolts fall out of my rear end in my differential, and I was going around a corner, and that force caused that bolt to slide up into the drive line or into the differential, and it
Hmm.
locked up my whole rear end for a couple seconds, and I almost spun out and went into a ditch.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Fun
whoever worked
fun.
on that car before me, I want to kill them because there was a
Yeah.
lot of things that they just completely screwed up on the car. But anyways, neither here nor there.
Yep.
But I miss that thing. I would love to still be driving it. I
So
mean, I
my
still have it,
favorite yeah,
but
you just can't drive it.
yeah.
I have to say my favorite car that I've had in a long time is the 2001 Chevy Silverado that I bought. I don't know, like a year ago for I don't know $3,000, which was back when used cars were really super expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a piece of junk, but it's actually a lot of fun. Like I don't know, I had a Honda Accord for a long time, and it worked. It drove. It never broke down, but like it just wasn't comfortable for me. But this Silverado, it's comfortable. I don't feel bad when I like scrape it against the pine trees when I'm coming into our driveway that I need to trim back, or it's all
I had
kinds of
a
beat up. I can't fill up the gas tank more than 3/4 full, or I start leaking some gas, and like there's
that's
all
how my
kinds of
Mustang
problems
is.
with it.
It had 15-gallon tank, but I couldn't fill it over 10.
Yeah.
So
the
no,
other
my
day
my
I
go ahead.
the other day I was driving it, and there must be some sort of loose connection, or maybe some sort of intermittent short because it was raining that day. But as I
Mm-hmm.
was driving along, the gauge cluster would just die and then come back on, and then a couple
Oh
seconds later it
no.
would die and then come back on. And it's like, oh, that's probably not great, but it's still
Oh,
running, so it's fine.
that's hilarious. One of the more fun cars that I've owned in my past was whenever I started working over at my old job. It was an hour drive each way, and in my Mustang, I went through a tank of gas every 2 days,
I would believe it.
and that was not fun. And so I made the executive decision to find the cheapest, most fuel efficient car I could get, and I ended up with a Volkswagen Jetta
Okay.
with the 5 speed manual, and it was a
hmm
diesel with a turbo,
Okay.
and it was awesome. It was a 2005. It was in really rough shape, had a lot of miles on it, but I got about 45 miles to the gallon.
Oh, nice.
and the little turbo was a ton of fun.
Yep.
So I really miss that car. I ended up getting rid of it because I got a girlfriend who turned into a wife, and I went down her driveway at the beginning of our relationship, and she lived on a dirt road, and whoever owned the Jetta before me thought it was a race car and slammed it. And I caught a rock and ripped a giant hole in my oil pan.
Uh-oh.
And so I realized that if I was going to be going back and forth to a girlfriend that lived down a dirt road like that, I couldn't have that car. So
yeah.
I upgraded to my current car, which is a 2014 Fusion hybrid.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Still great gas mileage. I got it with like 60,000 miles, and in my first year or two, I doubled it because of how much I was driving it. But I switched to that because it had a higher ground clearance and still got like 40 miles to the gallon. So I missed that Jetta. That Jetta was so much fun. And I loved it because I could roll coal, and I just loved like gassing people out that were annoying. I'd be rolling coal in my Jetta. But it was fun.
Anyway, on that note, do you want to take us out?
Yep, we've kind of got a little sidetracked, but that's usually how we end. That's yes, standard per this podcast this week. So those that have hung on, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us for the day, or for the podcast. Please tell all your friends, and I guess I'm Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, signing out with AJ from Design the Everything.
Bye.